Would you call the cops on your own wife while she's 9 months pregnant? Over $100. It started with blue lights flashing against the white siding of their small house in Warner Robins, Georgia. The kind of lights you pray never stop in front of your home. Neighbors stood at the edge of their driveways, whispering, their voices carrying in the humid night air. And right in the middle of it all was Danielle Ellison, 9 months pregnant, barefoot, wearing an oversized t-shirt that clung to her belly, standing on the porch with her hands behind her back as an officer clicked cold metal around her wrists. Please, please don't do this, Danielle begged, her voice cracking. Tears streamed down her face, cutting clean lines through the sweat on her cheeks. She looked at her husband, the man she had trusted, the man who promised to love her through everything. Cody, please, you know me. I didn't take your money. I swear to you, I didn't. Cody Ellison didn't move. He stood frozen on the top step, arms folded, jaw tight. His face was a storm, anger, disappointment, and something else he couldn't quite name. You've been lying to me for weeks, Danielle, he said finally, his voice low but sharp enough to cut through the murmurs outside. And I'm done. You think I'm stupid? $100 doesn't just walk out of the drawer by itself. Danielle shook her head violently, trying to steady her breath between sobs. Cody, I haven't lied. I would never steal from you. Not now. Not ever. Please don't do this to me, our baby. Her words were cut short by the officer gently guiding her toward the patrol car. The sound of her bare feet against the gravel mixed with the quiet click of the door as it opened. For a moment, everything seemed unreal, like this couldn't possibly be happening on their quiet little street. But it was. As Danielle slid into the back seat, wincing from the hard vinyl pressing against her swollen body, she turned her head to look at Cody one last time. Her eyes weren't angry. They weren't even pleading anymore. They were empty. And that emptiness hit Cody harder than anything she could have said. But he stayed silent, because in his mind, he was doing what any responsible man would do. He was protecting their future, their money, their family. At least, that's what he told himself. The door shut. The cruiser pulled away slowly, red and blue lights washing over the small houses on the block. The neighbors started to drift back inside, though Cody could feel their judgment hanging in the sticky Georgia air like smoke. He rubbed the back of his neck and muttered under his breath, "You did this to yourself, Danielle." But as the sound of sirens faded into the distance, a knot formed deep in his stomach, a knot he didn't recognize, not yet. Because this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning. But what Cody didn't know was that before the night was over, everything he thought he knew about his wife, and himself, was about to be shattered beyond repair. 8 hours earlier, life inside that same house seemed almost normal, at least on the surface. The late summer sun poured through the blinds, lighting up the kitchen where Danielle stood at the sink, rinsing a bunch of grapes. Her back ached, her ankles were swollen, and every move felt heavier than the last. 9 months pregnant and running on 3 hours of sleep, all she wanted was to make it through the day without snapping at someone. "Babe, have you seen my phone?" Cody's voice came from the living room. He was already half-dressed for work, a dark gray shirt clinging to his broad shoulders. Danielle rolled her eyes and called back, "It's probably under that mountain of clothes you left on the couch." He walked into the kitchen, smirking. "I told you I'd fold those later." "You said that 3 days ago." She smiled faintly despite her exhaustion. Moments like this, teasing each other, used to feel easy. Lately, though, even their jokes carried an edge neither of them wanted to admit. Cody leaned against the counter, looking her over. "You okay? You've been moving slow all morning." "Slow?" She gave him a look. "Try carrying around a bowling ball in 90-degree heat and then tell me about slow." He chuckled and kissed her forehead. "Fair enough. Hey, I'm gonna grab something from the dresser before I head out. Need cash for lunch." Danielle nodded, popping a grape into her mouth as she turned back to the sink. She didn't notice the way his eyes narrowed a little when he walked toward their bedroom, didn't hear the small curse he muttered a minute later. When Cody returned, his expression had changed, harder, tighter. "You take any money out of the drawer?" His tone wasn't casual anymore. Danielle looked up, confused. "What? No. Why?" "There was 200 in there yesterday. Now there's barely 100. She frowned, setting the grapes aside. "Maybe you spent some?" "I'd remember if I spent $100, Danielle." His voice was sharper now. You sure you didn't grab any? Why would I take money from you? She blinked, stunned by the accusation. Cody, come on. We're about to have a baby. I'm not sneaking cash like some thief. But he didn't answer right away. He just stared at her, like he was trying to read something in her face, and that stare made her stomach twist. Cody, she said quietly, you really think I'd do that? For a moment, he almost softened. Almost. Then he shook his head and grabbed his keys. I gotta go. We'll talk later. The door closed behind him with a weight that felt heavier than words. Danielle stood there, hands resting on her belly, feeling the baby kick against her ribs as a single question burned in her mind. Why doesn't he trust me anymore? But trust wasn't Cody's strong suit, not when money was involved. He'd grown up watching his parents fight over every dollar, watching bills pile up, watching eviction notices show up on their door. To him, money wasn't just paper. It was security, control, proof that he wasn't like his father. And right now, $100 missing felt like the start of everything he'd spent his life running from. But what Cody didn't know was that Danielle had her own secret, a secret she'd kept for weeks. And by tonight, that secret would blow their lives apart. By the time Cody pulled back into the driveway that evening, the Georgia sun had dipped low, staining the sky in streaks of orange and pink. His shift at the auto shop had been long, but the missing money stayed on his mind like an oil stain he couldn't scrub out. As he walked inside, the smell of fried chicken filled the air. Danielle was at the stove, humming softly as she turned the pieces in the pan. Her hair was tied up, and she had one hand on her hip, the other steadying herself on the counter. 9 months pregnant and still cooking dinner. He noticed that, but it didn't soften the edge in his chest. Hey, she said, smiling faintly without turning around. How was work? Busy. He dropped his keys on the table and leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Where's the $100, Danielle? The smile slid off her face like water down a drain. She set the tongs down slowly, turned to face him. We're still on this? Yeah, he said flatly, because it didn't magically disappear. She sighed, running a hand down her belly. Cody, I told you, I didn't take it. Maybe you miscounted. Or maybe you... I'm not stupid, Danielle. His voice cut through the kitchen, sharp enough to make her flinch. I know exactly how much was there. I put 200 in that envelope, and now there's 100 left. She stared at him for a long moment, her eyes glistening but hard. You really think I'd steal from you? From us? While I'm about to give birth to your child? He didn't answer. Not right away. That silence spoke louder than anything. Danielle shook her head slowly. Wow. Don't do that, Cody said, pointing a finger at her. Don't act like you're the victim here. You've been acting different lately, hiding stuff. You think I don't notice? Her mouth fell open. Different? Cody, I'm 9 months pregnant. Everything about me is different right now. But he wasn't listening. Not really. His mind was already building a story. Danielle slipping money out of the drawer, maybe talking to someone behind his back, maybe hiding something he didn't want to know about. Where is it? He demanded again, stepping closer. I don't know, she shouted, her voice breaking. I swear on everything. I don't know. For a second, they just stared at each other, both breathing hard. The baby kicked against her ribs and Danielle winced, one hand pressing to her side. You need to calm down, she whispered, tears streaming down her face now. For the baby's sake, just calm down. But Cody couldn't. Not when the image of that empty space in the envelope burned in his brain like a warning sign. He turned away, pacing the length of the kitchen, his jaw clenched so tight it ached. If you're lying to me, he muttered, half to himself. Danielle's voice cracked. I'm not lying. He stopped and looked at her, really looked at her. Sweat on her forehead, hair sticking to her neck, belly so big she could barely stand straight. She didn't look like a thief. She looked like the woman he'd promised to protect. And still, he didn't believe her, because in Cody's mind, trust wasn't given, it was earned. And tonight, Danielle had failed that test. But Cody was about to make a decision that would cost him more than money, a decision he could never take back. Dinner sat untouched on the stove, the smell of fried chicken now hanging heavy in the air. Danielle had sunk into the couch, one hand resting on her belly, the other wiping tears from her cheeks. Cody paced the living room like a man trying to outrun his own thoughts. Cody, her voice was soft now, shaky. Please, just sit down. Let's talk like adults. We're about to have a baby. This isn't good for either of us. He stopped pacing, turned to face her. Talk about what? About how my money just walks away? About how you're lying straight to my face? Danielle blinked, stunned. Lying? Cody, I swear on my life. Stop saying that! His voice thundered through the house, making her flinch. You think words mean anything? I grew up on broken promises, Danielle. I'm not about to get played by my own wife. Her chest rose and fell in uneven bursts as tears spilled freely. Played? Cody, I'm 9 months pregnant with your child. You really think I'm plotting against you? Over $100? Money is money, he snapped. You don't respect it, that's the problem. First, it's 100. Then what? You think I'm stupid? You think I don't see what's happening here? Danielle stared at him, mouth open in disbelief. What's happening here is you don't trust me. After everything we've been through, after everything I've given up for you, you think I'm stealing from you? Is that what I am to you now, some gold digger? Cody's nostrils flared as he grabbed his phone from the coffee table. If you won't tell me the truth, someone else will. Danielle's heart dropped. What are you doing? Calling the cops. His voice was like steel. They can sort this out. Her breath caught. No, Cody, please, you can't. She pushed herself up from the couch, struggling to balance her swollen body. Her feet were bare, her legs trembling as she waddled toward him. Don't do this, please, for the love of God, don't do this to me. Then tell me where the money is, he barked. I don't know. Her voice cracked as she clutched the back of a chair for support. Cody, this is insane. You're my husband. We're supposed to be a team. But he had already pressed the numbers. 911. Danielle's chest tightened as panic flooded her body. She reached for his arm, tears blurring her vision. Please, I didn't take it. I swear to you, I didn't take it. Cody yanked his arm free, turning his back as he spoke into the phone. Yeah, I need an officer at 182 Cedar Point Lane. Yeah, theft. In my own house. Danielle let out a broken sob, sinking to her knees on the hardwood floor. The baby shifted inside her, a sharp kick under her ribs. Every instinct screamed for her to protect her child, but she felt powerless, trapped in a nightmare she couldn't wake up from. When Cody hung up, the silence was deafening. Danielle stared at him through tear-soaked lashes, her voice barely above a whisper. Do you hate me that much? His throat tightened, but his face stayed cold. I hate being lied to. The room felt heavy with a darkness neither of them could name. Danielle turned her head slowly toward the door, almost expecting to hear the sirens already. Her mind raced with one thought. This can't be happening. He can't really do this to me. But Cody, he believed he was doing the right thing. He believed that standing his ground now would save him from being walked over later. What he didn't know was that the choice he made in that moment would not only break his wife's heart, it would break him too. The knock came faster than Danielle expected, hard, authoritative, and loud enough to rattle the doorframe. She was still sitting on the floor, wiping her face with trembling hands, when Cody strode across the room and opened the door. 2 officers stood there, uniforms crisp against the fading evening light. The taller one, a black woman with a firm but calm expression, spoke first. Mr. Ellison? Yeah, Cody said, his voice tight. Thanks for coming. It's her. He pointed over his shoulder. She took money from me. Danielle's head jerked up. Are you serious right now? Her voice cracked as she scrambled to her feet, gripping the chair for balance. The officer raised her hand slightly. Ma'am, let's just talk for a second. What's going on here? What's going on, Danielle shot back, tears streaking her face, is that my husband lost his damn mind. I didn't steal anything. I'm 9 months pregnant. I can barely bend down to tie my shoes. Ma'am, the second officer, a stocky man with a shaved head, stepped forward. We're just here to figure this out, but we need you to stay calm. Calm? Danielle let out a bitter laugh that dissolved into sobs. He called you on me, his wife, the mother of his child. Over $100. Neighbors had started to gather outside, drawn by the flashing lights from the patrol car. Whispers floated through the humid air. What's happening? Is that Danielle? Oh my God, isn't she due any day now? Danielle glanced toward the open doorway and saw Mrs. Jenkins from across the street standing there with her arms crossed, eyes wide. Behind her, two teenage boys recorded on their phones. Danielle's stomach twisted with shame. "Ma'am," the female officer said gently, "I'm going to need you to turn around for me." Danielle froze. "What? No, please, you can't do this. I didn't do anything." "It'll be quick," the officer assured her. "We just need to take you in, get this sorted out." Danielle turned to Cody, her eyes desperate, pleading. "Cody, please, stop this. Tell them the truth. Tell them you believe me." Cody's jaw clenched, his hands gripping the doorframe so tight his knuckles whitened. He didn't say a word. And that silence, more than the flashing lights, more than the officers, broke her. The cold steel of the handcuffs clicked around her wrists. She flinched at the sound, her chest heaving as she fought to catch her breath. "Please," she whispered through tears as the officers led her out the door. "Please don't let them take me." The neighbors' whispers grew louder as Danielle waddled toward the patrol car, her bare feet scraping against the gravel. Someone muttered, "Ain't that a shame? Pregnant and going to jail." Danielle kept her eyes on the ground, her vision blurring. Every step felt like a punch to her dignity. She had never felt so small, so humiliated. The officers helped her into the back seat carefully, but the hard vinyl pressed against her belly, making her wince. She shifted uncomfortably, chains clinking against the doorframe as they closed it behind her. Cody stood on the porch, arms crossed, staring at the patrol car as it pulled away. For a moment, he felt victorious, like he had taken control, like he'd proven a point. But then his eyes drifted to the empty chair in the living room through the open door. The blanket Danielle had been using was still crumpled on the couch. Her phone sat on the coffee table, its screen lighting up with a text. "Doctor's appointment confirmed for tomorrow at 10 a.m. Something twisted in his chest. He ignored it, shoved it down deep, because in his mind he had done what he had to do. But while Cody stood there convincing himself of that, Danielle sat in a freezing cell a few miles away, clutching her belly as the first signs of labor began to ripple through her body. The holding cell was small and smelled faintly of bleach and something sour. Danielle sat on a cold metal bench, arms wrapped awkwardly around her swollen stomach. Her wrists were free now. The officers had removed the cuffs, but the sting from where they'd pressed into her skin still lingered. She tried to focus on breathing. In, out, anything to block out the echo of the other women's voices in the cell across from hers. But then came a sharp cramp that made her double over. Her hand shot to her belly, and a panicked gasp slipped from her lips. "Oh no, no," she whispered to herself, tears filling her eyes. "Not now, please, not now." Across town, Cody sat on the edge of their bed, staring at the envelope on the dresser. He had pulled it out the moment he walked back inside, ripping it open like proof would spill out. Still 100 left. Nothing more, nothing less. He rubbed his temples, trying to quiet the buzzing in his head. He should have felt vindicated. Instead, there was only a sick heaviness in his gut. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, breaking through his thoughts. Unknown number. He answered. "Mr. Ellison?" The voice on the line was calm, professional. "This is Officer Lane from the Warner Robins Police Department. We need you to come down to the county hospital." Cody's stomach dropped. "What? Why? What happened?" "Your wife. She's in labor." Everything inside him went still. His mouth went dry. "What? Labor? Now?" "Yes, sir. She went into labor in the holding facility. We've transferred her to Houston County Medical. You need to get here." Cody hung up without another word and bolted out the door, keys slipping in his sweaty hands. The drive felt endless, his knuckles white against the steering wheel as his mind screamed, "What did you do, Cody? What did you do?" When he reached the hospital, a nurse led him down a sterile hallway to a room where Danielle lay in a bed, her face pale and damp with sweat. She looked exhausted, her breath coming in short, shallow bursts, as monitors beeped steadily beside her. For the first time since this nightmare began, Cody saw her not as the enemy, not as someone trying to hurt him, but as the woman he loved, the woman carrying his child. He stepped closer, his voice breaking. "Danielle." Her eyes opened slowly. When they met his, there was no warmth, just emptiness. "You?" she whispered, her voice raw. did this." Cody swallowed hard, guilt clawing at his chest. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I shouldn't have." "Save it," she croaked, turning her head away as another contraction ripped through her body. She let out a low moan, gripping the side rails until her knuckles whitened. A nurse stepped in, checking her vitals. "She's progressing fast. Baby's coming soon." Then to Cody, "If you're staying, stand over there and don't get in the way." Cody nodded silently, moving to the corner of the room. His mind spun as he watched the woman he'd betrayed fight through wave after wave of pain, and then, like a cruel punch to the gut, the truth finally surfaced, uninvited, undeniable. The missing $100, the secrecy. He remembered the text on her phone earlier that day, doctor's appointment. Danielle wasn't lying. She wasn't sneaking money for herself. She was saving it for something connected to the baby. When the nurse stepped out for a moment, Cody leaned closer, his voice trembling. "The money, it was for the appointment, wasn't it?" Danielle didn't look at him. A single tear slid down her cheek. "Ultrasound, extra tests, because the baby wasn't moving much last week. I wanted to make sure he was okay. Insurance doesn't cover everything." Her words hit him like a freight train. His knees went weak, and he gripped the back of the chair for support. All the anger, all the accusations, all the pride, it crashed down on him in an instant, leaving nothing but shame. He opened his mouth to speak, but before he could, a scream tore through the room as Danielle pushed with everything she had. Nurses flooded in. The doctor followed. Chaos filled the room as life forced its way into the world. And Cody stood there, useless, broken, realizing the truth. He hadn't just lost $100 tonight. He'd lost something far bigger. But the final blow, the real cost of his decision, was still waiting on the other side of that delivery room door. The cries filled the room before Cody could even catch his breath. Sharp, high-pitched, alive. For one fleeting second, relief washed over him, because their baby was here. Safe. "It's a boy," the doctor said, his voice calm and steady as he placed the tiny, squirming bundle into the nurse's arms. Danielle didn't look at Cody. Her eyes were locked on their son, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. The nurse leaned closer, her voice soft. "Would you like to hold him?" Danielle nodded weakly. The nurse placed the baby in her arms, and for the first time all night, her face softened, not for Cody, but for the little life resting against her chest. She whispered something to him, words Cody couldn't hear because the pounding in his ears was too loud. He wanted to step closer, to share the moment, to be the father he had imagined himself being for 9 months. But when he tried, Danielle's voice stopped him cold. "Don't," she said without looking up. Just that one word, and it sliced through him deeper than any argument ever could. Cody froze, his throat burning. He opened his mouth, desperate to explain, to apologize, to somehow fix what he had broken. But what do you say when sorry isn't enough? Hours later, the baby slept in a clear plastic bassinet beside Danielle's bed. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of machines. Cody sat in the corner, hands clasped so tight his knuckles were white, staring at the floor. Danielle finally spoke, her voice hoarse. "Do you know what it feels like to be handcuffed while carrying your child?" Cody swallowed hard, his chest aching. "Danielle, I was wrong. I let my pride, my past, your pride." She let out a bitter laugh, one that hurt more than her silence. "You didn't just let pride ruin us, Cody. You humiliated me. You took away the one person I thought I could count on. And for what? $100. He shifted forward in the chair, voice breaking. "It wasn't about the money. It was everything. Growing up broke, watching my parents fight over every penny, I swore I'd never let that happen to us." "And you just did," she whispered, her eyes glistening with tears. "You became the very thing you hated. You destroyed our trust because of something that didn't even matter." Her words hit harder than any blow. Cody felt the weight of every choice pressing down on him like a cinder block. He wanted to rewind the clock, to take back the phone call, to erase the image of her standing on that porch in handcuffs while neighbors whispered. But life doesn't give do-overs. "I'm sorry," he said finally, his voice a whisper. I'd give anything to undo what I did. Danielle turned her face away, stroking the baby's tiny head with trembling fingers. Sorry doesn't fix this, Cody. Trust isn't something you can glue back together. Once it's broken. Her voice cracked, and she didn't finish the sentence. For a long time, they sat in silence, the kind that feels heavier than words. Cody stared at the baby, wondering if his son would ever know him as a father worth respecting, wondering if Danielle would ever look at him the same way again. As dawn broke and light spilled through the blinds, Cody understood something he should have known all along. Love isn't about control. It isn't about keeping score or proving a point. It's about trust. And once you let pride take that away, you've already lost more than you can imagine. He rose quietly, pressing a kiss to the baby's forehead before stepping toward the door. Danielle didn't stop him. She didn't even look up. And that silence told him everything. Because some mistakes don't just cost money. They cost the very people you swore you'd protect. Don't let pride destroy what love built. Trust is fragile, and the smallest suspicion can burn bridges you'll never rebuild. Before you act, ask yourself, is this worth losing the people who matter most? If this story hit home for you, share it with someone who needs the reminder. Love requires trust, and trust requires humility. And if you're holding on to pride right now, let it go before it costs you everything.